Competitive Pokemon is divided into tiers, with weaker Pokemon falling down to lower tiers. This gives weaker Pokemon a place to succeed, without the strongest Pokemon in play. Currently, the lowest tier is called ZU, which stands for Zero Used. Despite that, ZU is not just a junkyard full of awful Pokemon, but it has a fleshed out metagame with dominant Pokemon of its own, the strongest of which is Mesprit. Mesprit is undoubtedly the strongest Pokemon in ZU. It's simply the best of every role. Mesprit is a fantastic stealth Oxara using its good bulk and access to good utility moves like Knockoff, U-Turn, Angro, and even Thunder Wave. This set usually invests in physical bulk, but it can also be specially defensive depending on your team. Mesprit's second most common set is Mortar Elite, which uses Nasty Plot and Terra Fell Radiant Keys to sweep the opponent. Though these two moves and Terra type are mostly locked, the rest of the moves can vary, commonly using Psychic or Psyshock for stab, with Anchor to shut down defensive play and get setup opportunities. This set can also utilize Trick Room, the last move slot, to compensate for Mesprit's middle speed. The last notable set is Choice Scarf. This works around Mesprit's speed problem, letting it function as a speed control and even a win condition. Mesprit is an incredibly versatile mon, which makes it very hard to justify not using, as it has a set that fits every team. Venusaur is widely accepted to be second in command, but despite that, it's not nearly as dominant as Mesprit. Venusaur acts as a good glue mon, checking a lot of threats like Whimsicott, Jolteon, and Basculin consistently thanks to Synthesis. It uses those entry openers to make progress with Knockoff and Slash Bomb, which is difficult to switch into. It also has Earth Power to snipe poison types that would be switch-ins otherwise. Venusaur is a very reliable Pokemon that fits on the most balanced teams. The rest of the monsters I'm gonna go by categories, with the first being special attackers. This category includes Charizard, Jolteon, and Whimsicott. These Pokemon use their decent special attack and high speed to wear down the opponent's team while wearing heavy duty boots to not get worn down themselves. Whimsicott and Jolteon are decent pivots with U-Turn and Volt Switch respectively, and can also act as decent breakers with the Choice Specs item, but that requires hazard control. Speaking of which, the tier mainly relies on Hitmontop and Sandslash for hazard control. Both use the move Rapid Spin, with Hitmontop being an offensive user using Technician Triple Axle in close combat's high base power, and Sandslash being the more defensive one, supporting the team with Rocks and Knockoff. Notably, both struggle to spin into ghost types, which makes allowing those monsters for removal kinda iffy. Next, we have the hazard setters, which are mainly Orthworm, Whiscash, Regirock, Sandslash, and of course our beloved Mesprit. All those monsters act as physical walls, using their bulk to set up stealth rocks, and in Whiscash and Orthworm's case, spikes as well. Despite all of them being physical walls, they do have different defensive profiles, as all of them have different typings. Orthworm is notable in that regard since Steel is difficult typing to come by. Steel types in the tier are few and far between, with only Orthworm, Magneton, and Berserker being viable. Orthworm we already discussed, but Magneton functions as an offensive pivot who uses its high base special attack combined with Analytic to threaten out opponents, while Berserker is more of a defensive pivot, which has utility moves like Knockoff, U-Turn, and Stealth Rock. Steel types have the important role of checking Mesprit, which tends to run only Psychic and Fairy moves which still resists. As threatening as it is, Mesprit isn't the only sweeper in the tier. Minio and the Sneasels act as physical sweepers, while Spiritomb and Farigiraf act as special sweepers. Minio uses the move Shell Smash in combo with Acrobatics' high base power to put insane amount of damage, easily being able to end the game. The Sneasels are a bit more honest than that, using their high base speed combined with Sword Dance to threaten a sweep. Unlike those three, which are fast, Spiritomb and Farigiraf go in the opposite direction and use Trick Room combined with Nazerbot to flip the table on more offensive teams. One of the best tools offense uses to not get run over by those sweepers are the extremely bulky Glastrier and Brood Bonnet. Those two Pokemon have ridiculous bulk, but are still very strong, letting them work on offensive teams. Glastrier uses Sword Stance to boost its attack, while Brood Bonnet uses the booster energy. Both of these mons share their flaws, which are being very slow and having awful defensive typing. Still, Terra can help with that, making those mons extremely hard to hit, usually forcing the opponent to trade multiple Pokemon into them. Both Bonnet and Glastrier are nice progress making mons, but if you really want to world break, Toxicroak, Typhlosion, and Chloritza are the mons you're looking for. Toxicroak acts a bit differently from the other two, using its setup move of Sorceress in combination with Life Orb and Knockoff to threaten every physical wall in the tier, instead of relying on choice items. Typhlosion and Chloritza are very threatening due to their high power moves, Eruption and Mega Launcher Dragon Pulse respectively. Both mons use the Terra choice items to further increase their power, making answering them defensively almost impossible. There are a few mons that are capable of answering them defensively. Those are the special warriors of the tier, the Snorlax and Lantern. Unfortunately, those would be answer rose to PU, leaving the tier with just the mark at the bottom of the barrel. Now, mark is a solid special ball, but it does not answer the floating Goloitza, leaving a power gap in the tier. Although defensive play is difficult to find in the tier, it's not impossible, thanks to a group named the Stall Babies. As the name suggests, it consists of the not fully evolved Pokemon Deepling, Corcoran, and Knucklestack, and the somewhat fully evolved Sableye. These four Pokemon have good defensive profile into the tier, but are very passive due to their low offensive stats, making them only worth using on stall teams. All of those Pokemon share a crippling weakness to entry hazard, as they are forced to run EV out over heavy duty boots, meaning you have to have good hazard control in order to use them. As for weather, currently the only variable one is snow, but it's a very important part of the meta. Abomasnow snow is the only real snow set of the tier. It doesn't excel much in one area, but with snow boosting its defense and Blizzard's high base power, it becomes an annoying one to get rid of. Most importantly, Abomasnow snow enables Bertic to double its speed with its Slash Rush ability. Bertic uses this speed to spam Icicle Spear with loaded dice, which thanks to its amazing 130 base attack does insane amounts of damage, which can be boosted even further by Terra Ice. Notably, both Bertic and Abomasnow are weak to Stealth Rock, which usually forces snow teams to add some sort of removal. And lastly, I want to mention Basculin, Vikavolt, and Skuntank, which didn't seem to fit in any of the categories. Basculin is a solid Scarfer, in fact one of the only ones in the tier, who uses the adaptability to still lead solid damage. Vikavolt is the web setter of the tier. It can also function as a bulky pivot. Skuntank is a new drop to the tier who seems to be pretty solid. It's a decently strong mon with a good typing that's hard to hit, and importantly, checks smash spread. In my opinion, Zero is one of the most fun tiers there is. It has a unique focus on offense, since a lot of the tier's defensive mons lack longevity, but the tier isn't hyper offensive because the power level is too low for that. I'll highly recommend giving the tier a shot, which is why I linked a bunch of my teams in the description for you to try.